morality of this ideology. My name is Crystal Din, and my presentation talks about capital punishment. And within this presentation, I'm going to be introducing the definition, its history, presenting the ultimate question, two major arguments that I support, and also refuting a possible argument that can be made on the other side. Now, what is capital punishment? Capital punishment, also known as death penalty, is the legalized killing of someone as a punishment for their crime. There are many different types of methods that can be categorized under capital punishment, and this could include, but is not limited to, lethal injection, lethal gas, firing squad, hanging, and much more. Now for its history. Capital punishment has existed throughout history for thousands and thousands of years, and the first instance in which it was first noted was during the existence of Babylon, which was 1750 BCE. Capital punishment has coexisted within society since the beginning. However, later on throughout time, many philosophers such as Aristotle and Plato began to question the validity of this measure. For example, when Socrates was executed by Athens in 399 BCE, Plato began to question whether capital punishment had resolved the theories surrounding modern state and sovereignty, arbitrariness, mistakes, and discrimination in the American institution. As a result, this really raises the ultimate question that really applies to today. Is capital punishment still acceptable within our current day society? And with the next two arguments that I'm going to present, I'm going to display why capital punishment is wrong and why this should be abolished. Now, the first main argument that I'm going to present is the eye for an eye phenomenon. This is seen within Hammurabi's code and is essentially translated to the acts committed onto an individual will not only be done on a victim, but also the committer himself. Now, though it may seem justifiable to present death to someone who has committed such a sinful crime, such as murder, for instance, it is still not morally right to do so. Every human is equivalent to worth, regardless of their race, belief, and much more. In the instance of murder, killing another human for the sake of their acts is just not right, because they are no less worth than any other human being. Other factors, such as their mental health or living situation, could essentially be the root cause of their final action. These individuals should be given the chance to explain themselves and display their reasoning for their doings. Instead of turning towards discrimination, we should essentially respect one another and open our limited perspectives upon the issue and understand that capital punishment is not always the right way to solve these kinds of issues. Now, the second main argument that I'm going to present is the economical aspect. Currently, within the US, there are over 2.2 million prisoners serving sentences in prisons or jails. Now, these prison facilities are essentially in charge of supplying prisoners with food, water, clothing, and other necessities they need to get by on a daily basis. However, this is rather troubling to manage with the continued use of capital punishment in the system, because capital punishments cost at least 6 times as much as a life sentence, and trials involving capital punishment cost the trials as much as 8 times as much. Now, these legal justice systems should really consider the overall cost of utilizing capital punishment and whether or not this method can put them at financial risk in later time. If these systems abolish capital punishment for good, this could alleviate the large amounts of financial burden upon them and save these systems millions of dollars a year by presenting some prisoners with a life sentence rather death penalty. Thus, the death penalty should really be reevaluated upon an economic aspect as to whether or not this would be beneficial within the economy. Now, I have just presented the two major arguments to support the oppositional side, meaning that I refute the idea of capital punishment. Now, next I'm going to be presenting a possible argument that the proposition would make, meaning that the proposition is those in support of capital punishment. And I'm going to basically refute a possible argument that they would make and show why it's wrong. Now, one of the main possible arguments that the proposition can make is that we should give them what they deserve. Now, what do I mean by this? Essentially, the proposition is saying that capital punishment should still be enforced because people who commit these sinful crimes should be given a taste of their own medicine. However, the opposition can essentially refute this argument by not only introducing the two prior arguments that I have introduced, but also refute this argument by discussing the philosophy of morality and whether or not it is still justifiable to carry out capital punishment, since this, similarly to an extent, aligns with criminal murder, the killing of another individual. Now, In conclusion, with the incorporation of the philosophical and economical aspect, capital punishment should be abolished. Now, though many states within the United States still legalize and still allow these prison systems to enforce the use of capital punishment, many states such as New Mexico, Illinois, and much more are starting to reevaluate and essentially abolish capital punishment within their prison systems. And for these reasons, I essentially refute the use of capital punishment and hope that these prison reformal systems will really reconsider utilizing it in later use.